to pay your dues. Oh God, come back home. This crazy world is filled with liars and
According to sources, agents Justin Castro, Chrystia Freeland, Jill Biden, and others fled when the Hazar Group's rule collapsed. They fled to avoid arrest for war crimes because their crimes against humanity can no longer be hidden, they say. For this reason, actors, actresses, rock stars, comedians, and leading world figures visit the outskirts, according to another CIA source. If you still don't believe that these people are running away to avoid arrest, take a look at the Guantanamo Bay prison photo on Google Earth. Obviously, this is an institution that houses thousands of kilometers of criminals. That's why their overlords, the Rockefeller clan behind the entire fake Biden regime, are now trying to negotiate a surrender, Asian intelligence sources say. Meanwhile, in Europe, its other owners, the Rothschild family, are trying to get protection from their former colony in Israel, claiming that the disclosure of their crimes is anti-Semitic. The problem is that a critical mass of Israeli residents now know that their ruling families were deeply involved in burnt offerings as part of their messianic project of exile from Europe to Israel. They wanted to become kings against the will of the Israeli people. The fact that Israel refuses to support its campaign to create a larger Hazaria on the outskirts is proof of this. The collapse of the Hazar Group's dominance in the West could be the trigger for something that has never happened in our history. Russian, Asian, and secret sources from the space program say that some amazing event may happen in the near future, some predict it this week. As is usually the case with such predictions, we don't believe it until we see it, but as we will report below, there are some extremely unusual things related to the Blu-ray project in Antarctica and elsewhere. Let's start with a look at the situation in the outskirts, where the last leaders of the Hazars are seeking protection. According to Western experts, the outskirts have already lost, since 80% of oil and gas fields are all oil refineries and large tank warehouses. Fields for sowing coal mines for large ports have been captured, a significant part of nuclear power and a significant part of coal leakage oil and gas fields on the Black Sea shelf. Therefore, the UN Security Council adopted a unanimous resolution calling for an end to the dispute on the outskirts of Russia. In other words, you admit that this is an internal Russian matter. The fact that the United States, Great Britain, and France agree with this resolution speaks volumes. This is the capitulation of the outskirts now dismembered. The southern and eastern parts will become part of Russia, while Poland and Romania will take over most of the western part. Therefore, the Polish president demanded the abolition of the border between the outskirts and Poland. There will no longer be a border between our countries. Thus, we will be able to live together on this land and build a common happiness and strength that will allow us to repel any danger, Polish President Andrzej Duda said. Now the question is whether Russia will allow a small core state as a suburb to act as a kind of reservation for the last members of the Hazar Group. Probably not, because, as the Speaker of the Russian State Duma Vyacheslav Volodin said on Saturday, the US leadership should also be held accountable for the crimes of the regime on the outskirts, thereby expanding the list of war criminals. According to the FBI, 40,000 little people have been disappearing in the United States every year for decades. Most of them were probably tortured to gain the energy of fear, as several witnesses now say. If this gets out, as it is now, these criminals will have no place to hide either on this planet or beyond. Since we're talking about fugitive criminals right now, let's take another look at Justin Castro, the election-obsessed Manchurian candidate who tried to turn Canada into a totalitarian camp of the obedient. Our Canadian intelligence sources tell us that the Canadian Forces National Investigative Service, CNIS, has been compromised by the Hazar Group. They accused a number of high-ranking generals of vague crimes, which were all refuted in order to prevent the military from doing its job and arrest the traitor Castro. The last straw for the Canadian military was that it seemed that Castro and his friends from the Hazars had removed General Trevor Cottier. Cottier was supposed to lead the Canadian military before being included in a long list of generals who were removed from office on far-fetched accusations of harassment. Now they are trying to explain his sudden disappearance with slanderous reports that he was caught by the Russians as the head of a laboratory for the production of dangerous substances on the outskirts. When we contacted our Russian sources, as well as Canadian and American intelligence sources, they all agreed that he was never captured by the Russians. It is assumed that this is a cover story to prevent the Canadian military from taking revenge for a high-ranking and popular General. Castro and his colleagues from the Hazar Group have been desperately trying to neutralize the Canadian military because their crimes against cocktails have now been fully uncovered and they are afraid of being arrested by the military police. Crimes against cocktails have already been written in detail elsewhere, so we just want to point out some of the main points. Probably most important was the publication of documents confirming that 1,223 people stopped breathing during the trials within the first 28 days after taking the cocktails, and it was still approved for use. The first domino has already fallen from it. Reddy Johnson, the company's executive vice president, was arrested at his home and charged by federal officials with multiple fraud. Will he sing like a canary or hang himself in his cell? Or maybe he has a sudden heart attack due to stress. Be that as it may, the attempt to use Cocktail 19 as a pretext for the permanent enslavement of humanity failed. For example, listen to the statement of Bibi Netanyahu's avatar that you have nothing to fear from the crown chocolate, it's all nonsense. That's why Israel said on Sunday it would cancel mandatory testing for arriving passengers at Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. To find out what you've been doing, check out this concentration camp. It's in Australia, not China. There is also an uprising against radical totalitarianism in China. China is facing constant criticism and public discontent over its blockages. The outbursts force the party to make a decision between economic growth, which has been a source of legitimacy for more than 4 decades, and Xi's efforts to show that the Chinese model is superior to Western democracy. Chinese history shows that the Chinese people go through a lot of oppression before suddenly and collectively erupting into rebellion. Now an informant from China has provided us with evidence that the widespread testing was just a sophisticated conspiracy by the French branch of the Rothschild family to launder bribes to Chinese officials. According to the informant, the fake testing was produced in China and then bought by the government for a lot of money under the pretext that it was imported by companies such as Roche. The appearance of a blood-red sky over Shanghai may be a sign that something is going to happen in China. Sources of the Asian Secret Federation promise that big changes are coming. In the Philippines, Bongbong Marcos, a member of the Dragon family, is on the verge of assuming the presidency. He is working with the alliance, and documents have been signed to free up funds for planetary revival, sources promise. The removal of President Rodrigo Duterte will also mean that David Rockefeller Jr. will lose his protection there, CIA sources in Asia add. This is one of the reasons why he is trying to negotiate a surrender. The selection of Marcos is just one of the big changes expected this week. Sources from the secret US space program say that Russia will also do something. The statement that Putin needs to go to the hospital and have an operation because of a possible illness is just an excuse. Putin has undergone a renewal, as we might call it. If he does show up at the victory parade on Monday, May 9th, you'll see the difference. It will be obvious. If a double or a CGI hologram appears, you'll know it too. Be very attentive to what is being sent in messages. If the latter appears at the celebrations, it means that its update has not yet been completed. When the treatment is completed, we will see the young man on Monday, May 9th. When this report was about to be published, images of Putin in the media at the victory parade made it clear that a new and improved Putin would represent Russia. Thus, if the sources are correct, from this week there will be a regime change in the United States, Russia, Canada, and other places, followed by the disclosure of previously hidden technologies. For example, people from the space program say that now children are produced in artificial chambers. According to sources, this will significantly increase the human population to prepare for the colonization of the universe. Of course, we find this disturbing, but it is important to inform people about it so that a collective and democratic decision can be made about this technology. Now let's learn more about the latest version of the Blue Beam project. That's what our high-ranking secret sources of the Space Forces tell us. A huge ancient alien spaceship has been discovered in the east of Antarctica, an area that has been very hot in recent months. Its diameter is estimated to be more than 1 mile. Excavations are still underway. There is an ancient city next to the spaceship. It's completely off the radar. This rescue is controlled by Trump, Putin, and the alliance. Additional finds are made almost daily. No one is allowed access to this area. Scientists, specialists, and the Russian/US Special Operations Command are not allowed to leave the area until further notice. The message blocking has taken effect. This, apparently, is one of the reasons for the heating of the territory. You are using the magnetic pole shift together with dew from outer space, which are now controlled by the alliance. Sources continue. There are many very old things under the deep ice that have been buried for tens of thousands of years. Like a huge temple complex in Cambodia, buried under a forest, but with a new type of radar called LiDAR, scientists have found it. It is bigger than Angkor Wat. It may be the largest ancient city in the world. Of course, we will try to get permission for the TV crew and a group of journalists to visit Antarctica to confirm that this is real. The sources also provided us with a video of Northrop Grumman Corporation's TR-3B anti-gravity device. The fact that you name the manufacturer is a good sign that this technology will soon be open to the general public. Last but not least, this week we will show some more Blue Beam images related to the project. In conclusion, when the Hazar group is finally defeated, a cornucopia of futuristic technologies will be released to the public, and isolation on planet Earth will end. As always with such things, you can't believe it until you see it for yourself. In the meantime, we must all continue to fight until humanity is truly liberated.
One day I hope you see the truth. This puppet show stays on because of you.